Good morning.
All right, so this is the last one of the semester. That song should wake you up. So we've talked about being resolute. And when I think of resolute, the more and more we get into, this coronavirus thing that we thought that when it hit in 2020, I don't think any of you were like, man, right before 2022, we're going to be talking about like the fourth level of this again. Nobody thought that. Nobody thought that this would be around. And what happens is, if you're a resolute leader, you have this purposeful action, you can actually rise above it. Because there have been people and even organizations that have stopped, not people stopped, but organizations that have stopped just operating. It's too hard for them. They don't want to keep doing what they've always done. So to be resolute, that purposeful action. So we've talked through that the last couple of months, and for this month, we're going to talk about looking for blind spots. So when I think about blind spots, I want you to help you understand a couple of things. When you're driving a car, you were taught where your blind spot was, right? Okay, if you're not shaking your head, I'm never driving in your blind spot. But if you were taught to drive a car, you were told that you need to look over your shoulder and not always trust the mirror, right? And now we got these things in our car that have these little lights that tell us, hey, there's somebody in your blind spot. But when you're driving down the road, there's semi-trucks that say what? If you can't see my mirrors, I can't see you. I am glad Philip is the only one that actually sees that, but that is true. If you're driving by a semi and you can't see their mirrors, they cannot see you. Blind spots, that's what's going on here. We all have them. So you all have blind spots, and they can be identified. So you know where the blind spot is in your car. Like when my parents had a boat out in Indianapolis, I knew where the blind spot was in the boat. Now, there are several times, one of the few accidents I got in on a boat was because I did not look in my blind spot before I decided to make a hard right turn. And I cut off a jet ski. He went out of the way. He was okay. He's fine. Everybody calm down. He's okay, but I forgot about my blind spot. And the only accident that I've ever been in the state of Ohio, I said that in the state of Ohio, was when I was working for Side of Hills and I was driving back in one of their vans. I forgot to check my blind spot and I hit another car switching lanes. So blind spots are there. They're there all around us. And it's not like you need to be, oh my goodness, I have blind spots in my life. I can't fix this. No, they're there to help you. They're identifiable. Another thing is they are an opportunity for growth. So when I think about blind spots, they might obstruct your view. When a blind spot that obstructs your view, that is something, and you get into an accident, that is something, it's like, oh, my bad, I didn't mean that to happen. There are other blind spots that you just refuse to look at. You refuse to look at those blind spots because they are not something that you want to deal with, and that's something where you have actually purposefully had a blind spot and done nothing with it. So we're going to walk through these things. So when a blind spot obstructs your view, it could be that you're just unaware your words are being interpreted this way. Or it could be you're unaware of what a friend is going through. Or you're unaware of what has happened with that professor or that pastor. That's a blind spot. It doesn't mean that you did it intentionally, but it's a blind spot, right? You were unaware of it. Now let's switch gears to the other kind of blind spots. It's a failure to exercise judgment and discernment. Meaning, what you've done is, I could care less what Jesse thinks. I know that his truck broke down, but I'm just going to drive by him because he's got a Michigan plate, and I'm just going to go home. That whole idea is that is a blind spot. Or if I know that you don't like to be called out in public, and I call you out in public over and over, that's a blind spot that I'm just saying, you know what? I know that it's there. I could just care less. And to go back to the driving analogy, if you're around somebody that just could care less about their blind spots, two things. Don't drive next to them and don't drive in their car. Because one of the times you're going to get hit or you're going to hit somebody else. So there's two types of blind spots. One that you're just unaware that they're there and those happen. And the second is you're aware and you just don't care. All right, so I don't want to overwhelm you with this, but I do want you to understand there is a way to overcome these. There's a way to understand it. And it's really simple because it's something that you heard in your interviews: attitude, clarity, and discipline. So when I think of attitude when it's regards to blind spot, am I teachable and approachable? So if I do something that maybe offends Riley, more Amy because I called her, what did I call you this morning? I don't even know what, but Sarah, yeah. So if I did something to offend somebody, am I approachable for them to come into the office or send me an email or send me a text message and go, you know what? This happened, that kind of offended me. Am I that kind of person? So in order to find and know your blind spots, you got to be teachable and you got to be approachable. If you just give off this vibe of, I don't care what I do, I don't care how I made you feel, that's going to be a problem, okay? So your attitude is first. You've got to have the right attitude. There are two quotes that I want to give you, and it's called Embracing the Unknown. Socrates said this: you don't know what you don't know. Number one, you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know that it's somebody's blind spot, you don't know that, right? So people, it's your job as team members to help other people find out what their blind spots are. That doesn't mean you go around every single time and you point out everything that Anna does wrong. But it's the idea that you don't know what you don't know. And it's important that you understand this. And in the great theologian, Mark Twain, he said this: it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. So it's not what you know, it's what you think you know that really is not real. And you're going to find out the higher and the longer you're in leadership, you're going to think that you know something, and it's really ain't, or in the words of Mark Twain, it really ain't the way that it is. It ain't so. That's part of it. Do you have that attitude of humility that you're willing to say, I don't know what I don't know? And do you have that attitude of humility that you're willing to say, you know what? Maybe what I think about Alec is not actually accurate, so why don't I go ask him? Or why am I not approachable to let people point out where I make mistakes? Because you all make mistakes. I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. So that starts with your attitude of humility. So I put this down as a statement. To be resolute starts with the proper attitude. To have that resolute action, if you don't have the proper attitude, you don't have anything. Attitude is key. It is the key, because when I get worked up, it's usually because I feel offended. I feel offended because somebody did me wrong. I feel offended because somebody did me wrong because I think it's all about me. Right? You could trace it back to attitude. So number one, to find your blind spot, be aware. Be aware what you don't know. Be teachable and approachable. The next one is clarity. There's a couple. These are more intentional. Recruit a spotter. Whenever I was traveling for Cedarville, we were supposed to have a spotter when we backed up the van and trailer. Never did it. But you were supposed to have a spotter with the van and trailer so you didn't hit the trailer against something. So you recruit a spotter. And finding a blind spot, this is what that spotter does. It's somebody that I would be willing to go ask, hey, what was it? Are there any blind spots? What was a blind spot that you might have seen in this meeting that I just ran? So number one, it's somebody I feel comfortable with approaching. That's a spotter. Number two, a spotter is also a person that feels comfortable and has the courage and has the relationship that they will speak into your life even when you don't even come and ask them about something. So a spotter is not just somebody that you go to and go, hey, how did I do today? Oh, great, great, great. It's not for your ego. A spotter is there to help for you to know that I can go to them and ask questions if I feel like I went offline. Yesterday about the exec meeting, I didn't feel like I went offline. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. So I talked to Jesse about it. I said, Jesse, what did you get from the meeting? So Jesse acted as my spotter. A few years ago, I've had students come in the office that have been my spotters that have been like, you know what? You kind of didn't mean to do this, but this is how this was interpreted. Dan DeWitt is a spotter of mine. That is a scary thing to think about. But Dan DeWitt is a spotter of mine, and he's willing to tell me not only when I do things wrong, but when I do things right. So number one, find a spotter. Number two, take time to reflect and assess. And you got to ask the right questions. So let me give you 4 questions that maybe you should ask. What went well? So like, what went well? I think a lot of times we focus on, hey, what did I miss? No. Start with what went well, because you're going to realize that there's a lot more success than failure. And a lot of times when you start with that question, what did I miss? You're starting from a defeated mindset. I need you to start from, hey, what did God allow me to do? What went well? Celebrate that, because perfection's a myth, but things did go well. Don't be Linus from the Peanuts cartoons where he just walks around, got the dust come. No, things went well at times. Then you ask yourself these questions. What did I miss? How did my actions affect others? And what was my attitude? So when I have blind spots in my life, I'm like, okay, what went well? Okay, good. God's still working. Number 2, what did I miss? Number 3, how did my attitude or what did I do affect others? Wow, I didn't mean for it to do that way. And then what's my attitude towards that person? 9 times out of 10, I'm going to realize and find my blind spot before anybody else can point out my blind spot. So number 1, it starts with your attitude. Number 2, it goes to clarity. And let me give you this. To be resolute, you must reflect and assess. Reflect on the past so you can focus on today and dream about tomorrow. I think a lot of times we're like, well, we're done with that. No, you got to reflect a little on the past. Don't live in the past. Like I graduated from high school in 1991. I don't need to live on the past and what happened in high school, but I need to reflect on what God has taught me so I can focus on today and dream about tomorrow. So attitude and then clarity, and then the last one is discipline, attention to details. This is really where, when you're looking for blind spots, you can be resolute. Because the definition of being resolute is purposeful action. In looking for blind spots every single day, you have to be okay with understanding that you will have a blind spot today. You will say something to a friend that might be taken not exactly how you wanted it to be taken. You might miss an opportunity to smile at somebody, and you don't smile at them, then automatically they think that you're mad at them. That was the only good thing about last year with masks. People didn't know if you were smiling. So if you missed it, it's okay. But like if you go by somebody, I've done this before. I'm supposed to smile at Ian. I don't. And Ian's like, well, what's wrong with him? Why is he being a jerk? And I didn't realize that was a blind spot. So understanding you're all going to have them today. But if you've got that attitude of teachability and approachability, God will open your eyes to blind spots. If you have the opportunity and you have the clarity to say, hey, friends, help me see stuff that I don't know. Help me realize that I'm not all that. And then if you have the discipline to do that daily, you'll find those blind spots. Because what happens in life, not just here in college, but what happens in life, you go to marriage, you go to church life, you go to work life, there are blind spots every day. And the people that can identify those blind spots and course correct are the people that are trusting to other people. They're trustworthy, and they're also dependable. But if you just walk in and you're just like, I don't care what anybody thinks, this is just the way that I am, blah, 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 and you're not willing to look at those blind spots and have the sensitivity that they could be there, you might miss a gospel opportunity. So resolute, purposeful action, you've got to find your blind spots. You've got to know that they're there. You've got to find them. And you've got to realize this. Failure is not final and it's not fatal. You can learn from them. So blind spots are not bad. They're actually a way to grow. So find your blind spots and be BZ. That's just what it is. All right, any questions?